So Rigetti stock dropped about 8% today after earnings. And I've been looking out here into Buenos Aires, seeing all of the cars going by, people going to work. The economy looks good here. The market looks fine. But I'll tell you, the market in the US stock market today has been volatile. And one of the markets that's been the most volatile has been this quantum computing market. We started covering some of these stocks since around $1 a share back around this time last year, and Rigetti's gone up over 30x since then. It's currently sitting around $30 a share. And while the quantum computing innovations are taking time to develop, even Nvidia just announced, the NVQ link where they're connecting quantum computers into the data centers now. And frankly, I see quantum computing growing. And in fact, we just added quantum analysis into the machine. So if I search up a stock like, let's say AMD, we just added quantum analysis into the machine here. So if you guys aren't familiar with the machine, it's a revolutionary new AI tool that I've been using every day. And our company recently added quantum analysis. So now, after we get projections from ChatGPT, let's say, or maybe we're using Grok, working okay. There we go. We can actually come here and we can run projections via Rigetti. So let's say that we have, the next 3 months projections on AMD, which is bullish, next 6 months, next 1 year. All of these different timeframes projected by, in this case, Grok, have a certain level of confidence. Or if it's Gemini, or if it's Claude, or we can, run all the projections at once. But basically, now we can run those projections through quantum analysis. So as you can see here, we could pull up Rigetti or IonQ, and I can click Rigetti here, see if it works. We're just starting to benchmark test and back test these new projections. We're just starting to get into it. So we'll see if it functions here. Again, Rigetti stock. There we go. And it says the most confident is in the next 1 year of projections on Rigetti, or AMD, which is fairly bullish for the stock over the next year. And so the offer for beta access right now is closing soon. If you guys want to grab access before it's closed to be able to do analysis with any AI, there are a few spots left, and it's the first link in the description. But let's jump into Rigetti stock here. Rigetti has pulled back from what were the all-time highs of $58 a share back down to $30 a share, which is quite the sell-off recently. We see them sell down, and after their earnings yesterday, they've sold off quite a bit. If we take a look at how their earnings came in, from a market perspective, again, market sentiment's been pretty good around quantum. In fact, it's been amazing compared to, which we'll get into some of the financials and stuff. But when you see Nvidia adding there's a Rigetti quantum computer over there on the left, and you have them adding into the data centers. And then you see, more contracts for quantum, more companies getting bought and sold related to quantum. It seems like a really good market to be looking at. But when you look at the recent earnings that just came out yesterday for Rigetti, they came in with their earnings, and it says that they came in with a Q3 loss. What was a pretty significant loss. Okay, so they came in a quarterly loss of 3 cents per share versus the estimated loss of 0.05. So that wasn't as bad. But the quarterly report represents earnings surprise, actually, of 40% from a quarter ago. However, over the last 4 quarters, the company surpassed consensus EPS 2 times. When you look, though, at the revenues of just 1.95 million for the quarter ending September 2025, that's a pretty big discrepancy in revenues generated versus how much you would expect for a company that's at their current market cap. And so when we were looking at the quantum earnings that came out directly from Rigetti, just go to their site here. If you guys aren't familiar with the quantum company, they are partnered with Nvidia, NASA, AWS, and Microsoft, as they are a leading quantum computing company based out of Berkeley. They have really good technicals, They've been innovating quite often, improving the fidelity of their single qubit gates to 99.9%, which has improved about 1% since last year. And they're on track to hit 100 qubits right now in their Anchor 3 system, which would be revolutionary. But as we're looking at them grow from a technology perspective, they haven't seen a lot of commercial use at all. And so that's where the issue lies, is when we look at the investor side. Let's just take a look at their earnings that just came out. Let's just take a look at the quarter 3 earnings, the 10Q. Let's take a look here. And let's take a look at the I don't know if we want to view the HTML. Let's see. This shouldn't be that complicated. Q3 earnings press release. Here we are. Total revenues were about 1.9 million. Operating loss was 20 million. Net loss was 200 million. GAAP net loss $10 million. So net loss per share 0.62 there. So the quarter, they saw strong momentum in demand for their on-premises quantum computers. Hence, I was just telling you we're working on implementing Rigetti into our AI analysis. So they're probably seeing some cloud usage, and then also they're seeing a quantum ecosystem that is more broadly being used. So potentially, we're talking, you can see Nvidia's NVQ link. They're supporting that initiative with Nvidia Open Platform for AI Supercomputer Quantum Integration, which is promising resource to accelerate hybrid computation. So again, by themselves, quantum computers are very difficult. They have to be used with GPUs at this time, and it makes a lot of sense. So that integration is massive. That's a really big announcement over the last month, especially flipping from, just a few, like literally a year ago or less than a year ago. Jensen said we're not really doing anything in quantum. It's 10, 15 years away. And then shortly after, we got 17 quantum builders working with Nvidia, and Nvidia investing large sums in the quantum companies. And so when we look at the quarterly results that just came out, they're expecting 150 plus qubit system around end of 2026. That's a big announcement. But again, not a lot of revenues yet. Now, they might see some revenues from us. As I mentioned, we're using it in our quantum analysis for the machine, and we're going to be using it much more. And I think that with the right approach, quantum used in the right markets, it's going to see a tremendous growth over the next few years. So I'm very personally bullish on it. But here's where it gets interesting. You might look at this and say, okay, they got the financials don't look so hot. Negative net income. They do have a lot of cash. They increased their cash. If we look at their quarterly report, it looks like their cash is at 558 million. So their cash right now is holding bullish, as their total liabilities and things like that are much less than that. So bullish on that side. But then on the income, you might say, man, it's just not really an income right now. And I think probably the main thing you're going to want to watch is that Nvidia integration, and then the cloud credits and things like that. Because when we're looking at renting, let's say, an hour usage of quantum computing, it runs between like $2,000 to $5,000 or $10,000 per hour to use the quantum computing. Now, we've had to get around that in certain ways. However, when it comes to using quantum computers for the mainstream, it's actually fairly difficult. It was quite a hard thing for us to innovate and start the initial connections with IonQ and Rigetti in this case. And so I can just tell you, as a user of it, it's not very user-friendly. Luckily, we have an amazing team. I am blessed to be working with a team member in our company that has tremendous experience around computers and connecting and running different formulas to make those API connections, or not even API connections, but actual calculations, or how to run your own data analysis proprietarily. Like those types of things luckily I have the connections, or our team can do that, right? But if I was trying to do this on my own and integrate, it would be much harder. And I think the everyday person, like, this is not like your everyday wrapper of like, oh, let's get ChatGPT behind. We actually build a lot of data into it. And so using Rigetti in your business is, I can tell you, we've just added it here, but it's not easy. So I'm hoping, that's like something they really start to onboard. They have the technology side, and you could tell they're very technical, but their marketing has not been very good, as far, or like their sales onboarding process for the everyday user has not been very good. And that's just part of any new company. Like, a company that's crushing it lately is Robinhood. Robinhood used to have the worst customer service in the world. Now they have much better customer service with real humans and things like that. And so same thing with Rigetti. Like, right now, the integration not so hot. I'm imagining it's going to be very, very smooth in the future. But overall, 6 months, that's AMD. Let's get maybe we get an analysis here on Rigetti as well. Maybe we could pull up Claude here, Rigetti. Let's do that, and then let's also see the top transactors on Rigetti recently. One thing that was interesting that we noticed about Rigetti is you got 322 buys versus 234 sells. So Claude, analyzing all of the insider buying and selling that's going on, it's saying that the institutional buying and selling, the institutions are fairly bullish, and it's just one factor to consider, but you have more buys than sells. The other key factor around that, and so you can see the next 6 months are fairly bullish. We'll see if that's fully loaded and how that's working. But the other key factor is that you see that Bank of America has been buying. You got let's take a look at some of the buys. State Street has been purchasing. You got BlackRock and Citadel as some top buyers. And then when you go over to the buyers and the sellers on the insiders, it kind of shows a different story. More selling transactions than buying transactions as of right now. So insiders have been selling more, institutions have been buying more. Institutions probably don't want to miss out on GPUs, is my guess. And insiders might see the stock as, okay, it's amazing, we're up this high, but look how high we are. They've been selling recently because probably they're saying, hey, this thing's going to stabilize. And so if this thing is stabilizing really I always kind of pictured the trajectory, something kind of like, it's always been kind of like this in the trajectory. I've always pictured it kind of like this, which is a very nice trajectory, but that there's a conservative play where you see this very consistent uptrend. You see them start to build more conversation around the quantum computers, but now after going up to $58, now we're looking at them sell back down here. And really, there is a support level around $27, $28 a share that they could find. But with their current earnings, they've had a few chances to demonstrate the commercial profits, and they really haven't come in with commercial profits. They've seen more investment from big tech, but they're still not quite there on the cash, or at least any revenue generating. They're building infrastructure right now. They're still high risk. And I think the conservative play as a long-term investor in Rigetti, we got positions on Charles Schwab, and then also here on Robinhood that we've more than doubled our positions. And I would be surprised if they hold this $29 to $30 range. And I would imagine that it's going to take a few years before they really stabilize around $50 to $100. And that it would make sense if they were a $20 to $30 stock in that range, somewhere here, kind of pulling back down and then slowly building. And then by, again, maybe this time next year, they're stabilized around like that $30 to $40 to $50 range, somewhere in here. And I think that would be even healthy for the stock. So again, kind of a sell down projection in the Rigetti, even as a holder myself. And then when we're looking at the, let's say we're looking at the bullish sentiment on Rigetti, they're projecting, according to Claude, that Rigetti is actually going to continue up as much as 40% over the next year. and that there's cyclical analysis in the price action. In fact, over the next week, it's bullish. The next day, it's bullish. Claude is fairly bullish. I've seen different projections over on, it's projecting some more extended sell-offs here throughout the day on Rigetti. With Grok, I think the analysis has been a little bit different, a little bit more on the bearish side or conservative side. But Claude and most AI models have been fairly bullish on the quantum. And of course, that's considering the SEC filings. That's even considering all of the charts that we feed into the analysis with those models, all of the proprietary data. And they're still fairly bullish. And so I'm not a bear on quantum, but I do see it's going to take some time for it to develop fully. It's probably going to be a couple years before we see stability around a certain price point where you're not seeing those huge swings, which presents great opportunities for the short term. But again, all those short-term trades are going to need a very clear plan and going to have some risk management. Otherwise, people are going to get burned. So short term, that's how it looks. Long term, I think it's fairly good. So you can see this this analysis here on Grok over the next week. Negative 1% is actually more bearish, you see, on Grok. However, now turning bullish over the next year, anticipating them to hold around that $35 to $40 range. So that's how it looks right now, and that's how we're going to be following it and using some analysis. Hey, we can even use Rigetti stock to analyze Rigetti stock. That's pretty cool. It says that the time frames that it has the most confidence in was the 4-hour time frame, which according to Grok would be a recovery throughout the day around that $31 price point, and it has less certainty around the 3 months. So that's how things look right now. If you'd like to do more analysis like this, you can lock in beta access before it goes away in the first link in the description. We just wrapped up our daily live trading sessions, so if you'd like to join us there, it's the second link in the description. In StockMate, you get a link about 15 minutes before market open, and it gets you access each day at market open to join our daily live trading that happens Monday through Friday. So that's the second link below. If I earned your thumbs up, again, smash the like button, do consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.